The City of Apache Junction's Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. It's Tuesday, December 10th, 2019. It is now 7 p.m. And if everyone would join me, please, in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Rudy.
Commissioner Henchy.
Here.
Vice Chair Heck.
Here.
Commissioner Howard.
Here.
Commissioner Kreidler.
Here.
Commissioner McGraw.
Here.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Present.
Commissioner Uli. Madam Chair, Commissioner Uli is feeling under the weather tonight.
We'll move on to approval of the agenda.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the agenda as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please, Rudy.
Commissioner Henchy.
Yes.
Vice Chair Heck.
Yes.
Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler.
Yes.
Commissioner McGraw.
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Yes.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Then we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Consideration of approval of the regular meeting minutes of November 12th, 2019. Can I have a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the minutes from the November 12th, 2019 regular meeting.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please, Rudy.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Yes.
Commissioner Henchy.
Yes.
Vice Chair Heck.
Yes.
Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler.
No.
Commissioner McGraw.
Yes.
5 in favor, motion passes, Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll move on to public hearings. Presentation, discussion, public hearing, and consideration of case CUP-2-19, a conditional use permit request by Nabis Holdings Incorporated and Perpetual Healthcare Inc.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Rudy Esquivias, I'm the Planning Manager. Madam Chair, this is a case CUP-2-19. It is a request for a new conditional use permit to operate a nonprofit medical marijuana cultivation and infusion kitchen facility at 1575 East 18th Avenue. The site is located in an industrial area, southwest corner of Tomahawk and 18th. Currently zoned B5 industrial. We also have B5 industrial zoning to the west and to the north. Basically, it's the Palm Springs industrial area from the old Palm Springs subdivision. To the south is a manufactured home subdivision, also part of the old Palm Springs development. And then to the east is the new Belagave subdivision zoned RS5 PD for conventional homes. The previous conditional use permit, you may recall, was revoked not too long ago for issues of a couple of issues of noncompliance. Basically, under the previous CUP amendment, the developers had asked to build a new building, get rid of the mobile minis that were there under a CUP amendment before that. The shade structure was going to go, and a permanent building was going to be erected to take place and accommodate everything that was occurring in the mobile minis. And then there was a time frame set up for the application, building permit application and construction of that building. The time frame was not met. The permit was never issued. So that was one reason. The other reason was that there was also supposed to be a lot combination processed because the property actually consists of 2 lots, this one here and this one here. So the lot combo was not done either. And then the third reason was along with the new building, the previous operators were supposed to hook up to sewer, so sewer hookup never happened either. I think in our presentation, when you considered revocation of the permit, we mentioned that there was a lot of internal disagreements going on between the various owners, and the whole thing just kind of fell apart. And so They never complied with those three important conditions that were time-sensitive under the previous CUP approval. So once again, the previous CUP was 417, revoked for noncompliance. Operations at the facility did end, and we did verify that all operations had ended by November 21st, 2019. I was out on the site yesterday. All of the mobile minis have been removed except for the refrigeration unit, which these folks would like to keep. It's a big walk-in refrigerator. And then there is a new management and ownership of the Perpetual Healthcare Group, which is the licensee for this particular medical marijuana facility. The new management company is a group out of Canada. They're called Nabis Holdings. And new people, they want to restart the cultivation. Although the cultivation aspect is going to be much less or lesser in scope than it was before, the main thing they want to do is operate the infusion kitchen. They're not proposing any additional buildings, any additional mobile minis, cargo containers, or anything of that sort. Basically, the site has gone back to status quo, the way it was previous to 5 years ago. With the one exception, they would like to keep the refrigeration unit. There are, in our staff report, we go through two sets of criteria. The criteria for the granting of a CUP in general, which is under section 1-16-12D3, and then there's a section on medical marijuana uses, which also spells out spacing requirements and, no drive-through windows and conditions on signage and stuff like that, separation requirements from other dispensaries, other sensitive uses. Staff has looked at the site. We've looked around the neighborhood. We've looked within the required separation distances. Things really have not changed a whole lot since CUP 417. We believe that the site still complies with the criteria for the granting of a CUP in general, and also for the conditions and other operating requirements for the granting of a medical marijuana use. Specifically, we go through a detailed analysis in our staff report. The applicant and their narrative has also presented their analysis. The facility has been there for, I think, about 5 years. Once again, other than Belagave finally getting built out, there's not a whole lot of other new things going on in the neighborhood. There aren't any churches, there aren't any schools, there aren't any things of that sort, sensitive uses that have sprung up around the facility since the last CUP. We did advertise this case in the newspaper as is required. We sent notices to all property owners within 300 feet. The site was posted with a 4x4 sign informing folks in the neighborhood, passersby, that there was going to be a public hearing. We have not received a single phone call or inquiry or letter or anything else about the new CUP request. In our staff report, we do recommend approval. Subject to the 22 conditions. You will notice that the 22 conditions are very similarly worded to the conditions that we recommended under the previous CUP, except, of course, that they're not adding a building. They don't have timeframes to remove mobile minis and stuff like that. Notably, however, we are recommending that the lot combination application be submitted within 90 days, basically a lot combo application. I think there's like a $250 fee. You fill out an application form. You provide a copy of the deed. The main thing in a lot combo application is a survey, so they'll need a little bit of time to get together with a surveyor and have the property properly surveyed, fill out the application form. So we are recommending that be done within 90 days. And a lot combo process, it's strictly internal. It's an administrative process, doesn't go to any public bodies for approval. They just need to meet the criteria for a lot combo. So we're asking for that to be done within 90 days, or be submitted within 90 days. And in discussions with the applicant, we are also recommending that within 180 days of your approval, should you choose to approve this request, that the applicants make application and they make arrangements, whatever they need to do with the sewer district to hook up to sewer. Even though the facility is not expanding, we believe it's a public improvement, not only for the facility but for the neighborhood. It's the thing we requested last time, and last time we kind of had Well, theoretically, it could have been up to a 2-year hookup date because it all depended on the construction of that building. That didn't happen. Well, this time, no building is proposed, but we are requesting that they make application to the sewer district for sewer hookup within 6 months, and that sewer hookup construction to be completed within a year. There are permits, from the sewer district, from Public Works, or street construction. They may need to dig up some asphalt and stuff like that, because I believe right now the sewer line is across the street at Belagave. So that's where we discussed possibly a 6-month time frame for that application to be made. And Madam Chair, unless you want to go through the conditions specifically, that's pretty much my presentation. I did give you a couple of new items on your desk. I've provided you with a recommended motion to kind of help you if you want to add if you want to cite findings of approval or denial for this request. So we added, the only thing we really added under this recommended motion that we didn't do in the staff report was we're giving you an opportunity to add findings for both general CUP, and if you want to cite some of the items under the medical marijuana section, you can do that as well. The recommended conditions are exactly the same as the recommended conditions in the staff report. So that's the first item. The second item is we did ask Lindsay, Ms. Shuby, to provide kind of an outline of who exactly the contacts are going to be at this new facility, this new ownership group. She has provided that. That's the second attachment. The revised site plan, it's revised only in the sense that they're more specifically calling out where the refrigeration unit is. That is the only change on this site plan from the one that you have in your staff report. And lastly, I also wanted to give you an updated copy of their approval to operate at this particular site. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Rudy?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Rudy, is this management company were to decide not to be the management company any longer, is that going to affect any of this?
Yes, we have a condition very similar to the previous one that says that if there's a change of ownership, if there's a change of management, they need to come back to you to update their information. Here we go, number 16. Should management and/or ownership of the medical marijuana cultivation infusion facility change at any time after CUP approval, new owners or operators shall operate the site subject to the exact same conditions of approval, including the provision of all new ownership, operator, and medical marijuana registrations, updates to the police department. By the way, these conditions were also including the item that our police chief always requests, spontaneous inspections. And then number 17, if changes in the members, directors, and officers occur, NABIS and Perpetual shall keep the planning division informed of said changes. If at any time during the operation the managing members or a majority of the members, directors, or officers changes, a CUP amendment is required. So, of course, we rely on them to keep us informed about those things, but you may recall that this particular condition has worked with us with the SVACHA people. They had some change in ownership and membership, and they did come back through their process to make that CUP amendment, and then they were requesting one other little thing. So it seems to be working, and we hope we wouldn't have any issues with these folks as well.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, Madam Chair. Rudy, the refrigeration unit, now was that one of the things that the other operators, the Perpetual, brought in without approval?
That did get approved. I mean, they all got approved eventually, but I think the fridge actually went in first. And it did get proper permits, and that is the only item, that was not the original 2 buildings in the shade structure that they would like to keep. It's a big walk-in refrigeration unit.
It does have proper permitting?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I wasn't sure that.
I think it's, Madam Chair, it has moved around. I think the first time I was out there, there was like a refrigerator here.
Right.
And then, I don't know if it's actually here or...
Yes, it is. It's basically
well,
where
is
the
it where
car
this
is,
car is
we're
parked?
actually-
It's where the car is parked
Yeah.
now, yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So, but it's a big walk-in cooler, like you'd see behind a restaurant, or, I mean, and I think it's painted like earth tones.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay.
Rudy, do you know?
It's not, you'd have to have a tractor trailer move it, I would.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
Okay.
it's not something you're gonna push around the property.
No, it's good size, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
It's anchored to
No,
the
no, I was
ground
just
and
gonna ask.
hooked up to electricity and everything. Yes, sir.
Rudy, is it currently in its permanent location as far as you know?
Is the what? I'm sorry?
Is the refrigerated unit currently in its permanent location?
As far as I know, yes, sir.
Okay.
They haven't, Lindsay or the applicants have not proposed changing it or moving around anywhere else, but maybe Lindsay can be more specific about that.
All right, very good.
Anybody down this way? Okay, thanks, Rudy.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
If the applicant would like to address us, please.
Chairwoman Nesser. I recognize a lot of you faces. Lindsay Shuby with the law firm of Gamage and Burnham, 2 North Central in Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you so much for hearing us tonight. We've discussed this case many times. Someone you may recognize in the audience is Dave House. One thing that has been consistent in this, well, I didn't do the first one, Mike Curley did the first hearing, but Gamage and Burnham has worked with you through this property, and I think we've always been available and open and honest and worked with you, and David House has been the property owner right from the beginning, so we also can hear from him if you have any questions about the management and the new relationships and all those things. We also have representatives of NABUS if we have any questions, and then doing part of the presentation is Mike Merowitz. You guys may recognize him. He did the July hearing for me. It was July 9th, and it was my husband's 40th birthday, so while I would have loved to be here with you, I was enjoying my husband's birthday.
No, you wouldn't. No.
So why are we here? It's always a blessing and a curse following Rudy. You don't know this because you don't travel around to all the different jurisdictions like I do, but Rudy is very thorough and very detailed, and you're very lucky. He's a very good planning manager here. So Rudy explained it to you. We're here for a new conditional use permit. Same place. There has been existing cultivation and infusion at this location for 5 years. But it's funny, we're getting back to where we started. We're getting back to Mike Curley's original application for a conditional use permit just for those 2 permanent buildings, and again with the additional refrigeration unit. The property will be managed by a new group, and I'm going to take you through a proper timeline. Perpetual Healthcare is still on the application, as that is the state-awarded license. The ownership cannot change. The state-awarded licenses with the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act, and those entities stay the same. So the majority of the board has changed. So let's say, for example, nothing happened in July and you guys didn't revoke the old use permit. It would be our obligation to come to you and to Rudy and Larry and Joel and tell you that the majority of the membership interest had changed in Perpetual. So the Perpetual name is still on there. We've been there from the beginning because that's the entity that was awarded the license. NABUS is a new company that's come in. And I think Rudy touched on this, but just kind of, I think it's important to note that the reason why we went through the revocation in July, and we were happily here to discuss it with you and to revoke the conditional use permit, had to do with compliance for real estate development. We didn't have issues with the state. You know, this is a dual regulated program, right? We not only have inspections from the state of Arizona twice a year, but we also have your police chief that comes out and the planning department that comes out. So this is a very heavily regulated industry and has been a heavily regulated site. And our compliance issues had to do with getting building permits and getting the new building on site. I can talk a bit about it, but the old management of Perpetual, there were 4 members and they got into a disagreement. I didn't handle that litigation. You know, when your client gets into a fight, when mom and dad get into a fight, you send them to different lawyers to manage that situation. So I was in the dark. Even, you know, I'd call Rudy and Larry and they would say, where are you with these deadlines? And I'd say, these people just can't decide what to do. There was no fault. They were not intending any bad will on Apache Junction. Frankly, your facility was they had pretty big problems. So they were managing all of their problems and frankly just not taking the time and energy to figure out what to do. We didn't meet the deadlines, and so your staff did the right thing by causing a revocation to November 21st. And I will tell you that the new operators did cease on November 21st, and there have been no operations out of respect for the revocation and the timelines that you guys set for us. So, Rudy talked about the subject property. Again, the condition of approval is to do a lot combination. We have there showing 1 parcel. Technically, it is 2, and we have a commitment to do the 90-day. We'll work with Dave House, the property owner, to do a lot combination within 90 days of this approval, if you are so kind to grant an approval of the conditional use permit tonight. May 2004, Mike Curley actually did that case. I wasn't here. And again, you guys approved. You felt from a land use component, a land use decision, that it was appropriate to have a conditional use permit for cultivation and infusion at this location. I first saw you guys on this case in December 2015, where there was a situation where the mobile minis were on there. You guys approved that in a temporary sense, but again, at that point, it was, it was a real estate issue that we were dealing with. June 2017, we came back and we said, okay, we've got a plan for these mobile minis. We're going to put a permanent building on there, and we're going to take the mobile minis off. That was the plan. I came back, we don't have it on here, but I think I came back that January of 18 with a plan set, and they had hired an architect, civil engineers to move forward with this new building. And like I said, there were just other issues with Perpetual that had nothing to do with Apache Junction, and they were not able to make the decisions and hit the timelines to get that new building and get the connection to sewer. So July 2019, you guys revoked it, effective November 21st, 2019. Here, October 2019, Nabis Holdings comes in, and they gain 100% control of Perpetual. I'd be careful not to use the words ownership or anything like that, because it is a nonprofit entity, and so there is no ownership. But Nabis now has 100% control in Perpetual Healthcare. Wow, they didn't know what to do. What? Our conditional use permit gets revoked? What happens? What are other options? What do we do? We finally decided by November 14th, gosh, we've got to file a new conditional use permit. But it was absolutely clear that the mobile minis had to be removed, that we're talking about operating in the two buildings on site, and operations did cease November 21st. And we were in constant communication with Larry and Rudy to ensure compliance with the revocation of the old conditional use permit 4-17. So who is Nabis? Nabis is a Canadian-based investment company. Mark is here if you have any questions, as well as Cole. And Mark Kritiak. I don't think I'm saying it quite right, but Mark, if you have any questions. They have a number of assets in a number of industries, including cannabis. The management team has actually had involvement in other licenses in Arizona and all over the United States. They successfully operate not only in the U.S., but also in Canada, again, Canada-based company, and other countries. And one thing that's interesting about that, and Rudy and I were talking about yesterday, the standards that they want to bring to this facility are very high, and a very high level of operations and safety and odor mitigation and all of those things. So they're a company that come to you with a lot of experience in this field, as well as others, a very, very professional company. This is the exterior of the building. One interesting note that Rudy mentioned is one of the conditions of approval for a CUP is that we have no signage. So this is Dave House property. From any other, as long as all the proper odor mitigation and everything is in place, it looks the same as any other kind of industrial business outside. Dave does a really nice job maintaining the outside. And again, without any signage or anything, I would argue that I would imagine a lot of people don't even know it is there. No mobile minis. We got them all off. And the refrigeration unit, yes, I can answer, Commissioner, we intend to keep it in that location there, and it is all permitted through the city of Apache Junction, and also has an approval to operate from the state of Arizona, so through the AMMA program. But that's what the site looks like now. It looks, when we saw those mobile minis on there, it looks almost kind of naked with the two buildings there. The site plan, Rudy walked you through it. The two existing buildings, they have all been permitted. If we make any improvements, we'll come through and ask your building department to go through any of those, the existing shade structure that's on there. I am going to ask Mike to go through the approval criteria, and then we are both available for any questions.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's good to see you again. As Lindsay said, I was here in July in front of you all. As Lindsay mentioned, for my portion of the presentation, my plan is just to address the approval criteria. Rudy did an incredibly thorough job, which makes a lot of this probably a little bit redundant and repetitive, but I will do my best to be brief. So first, to start, the approval of the conditional use permit will not require any improvements or affect the adjacent roadways, the off-street parking, public facilities, or public services. The site already has all necessary public services, and as we've now mentioned a couple times, the site will be connected to sewer in order to provide the necessary public facilities. As Lindsay had mentioned, and what's stipulated as a condition of approval, there will be no signage on the property. And one of the things about a medical marijuana cultivation and infusion facility, which is unlike medical marijuana dispensaries, is that they are not open to the general public. And so this facility will generate significantly less traffic than would be the case for other industrial uses that are open up to the public and which would be permitted by right on the site under the site's existing B5 zoning. For the second approval criteria, approval of this conditional use permit will not result in a significant increase in things like odor, dust, gas, noise, lighting, vibration, smoke, and heat. As was noted in the staff report, the prior facility, its operations did not cause a significant increase in any of these nuisances. And this facility, which will operate on a smaller scale, just within the site's two buildings, and will also have a smaller cultivation component, meaning there will be less growing and trimming of medical marijuana on the site, which are the two activities that are commonly associated with odor. And for those reasons, this site will be no exception to the operations of the prior facility, which did not have these significant impacts. All operations will be conducted entirely indoors, and any odor that is emitted from the site will be controlled with an odor control system that NABUS will install, and again, that's another stipulation of approval. For the third approval criteria, approval of this facility will not cause any adverse impacts on the surrounding properties or result in the lowering of property values. Again, the site is Zone B5 and it's located adjacent along 18th Avenue to other existing intense industrial uses, which include existing manufacturing uses, outdoor storage, and other intense industrial uses. And it's also important that I note that because there will be no signage relating to the proposed facility, from the exterior of the facility, because there's no signage and also that operations are conducted entirely indoors, from the exterior it will look a lot like the other industrial uses that are already adjacent to it along 18th Avenue. It's, again, compatible with the surrounding uses, including those industrial uses. The site is zoned B5 and includes, and as a result of that, it is allowed by right to have other intense industrial uses, many of which are more intense than the proposed facility. It's in conformance with the city's policies and objectives. Again, the proposed facility is consistent with the site's B5 zoning, which is the only zoning district that allows for a medical marijuana cultivation and infusion facility. And also, as Lindsay had mentioned, that one of the nice things about a medical marijuana use is that you have the dual regulatory framework. And so not only is the facility required to comply with all the city's requirements and laws, but you also have the extra layer of added safeguards by having to comply with the state requirements, which will be the case for this facility. No improvements will be needed to screen or buffer the facility from any of the adjacent uses, and that's because there are already site improvements that do that. The site is improved with a 6-foot-high masonry screen wall that surrounds the entire perimeter of the property, and then also there's already a gated entrance that's installed at the entrance of the facility. And then lastly, to address the final approval criteria for a conditional use permit request, approval of this conditional use permit request will allow a medical marijuana cultivation and infusion facility on a property that is appropriate for medical marijuana use and which can satisfy the tremendous increase in demand for medical marijuana. One of the statistics that our firm always likes to share when we have the opportunity is that in 2011, when the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act first came into effect, just over 16,000 medical marijuana registration cards were issued to qualifying patients. Now, according to AZDHS's latest monthly report, over 210,000 medical marijuana registration cards were issued, and so that represents an increase of over 1,300% since 2011. This site is properly zoned for medical marijuana use. It's zoned B5. As Rudy explained, it's properly spaced from all the variety of protected uses, including other medical marijuana uses, schools, daycare centers, and places of worship, and it's also located adjacent to industrial properties. And so that's all to say that this is among the few properties that is not only eligible for a medical marijuana use, but is also an appropriate location in order to satisfy that tremendous increase in demand that we've seen over the last 8+ years. And so just to conclude this presentation, again, this is repeating a little bit what Lindsay had said, but from a land use perspective, this site still remains an appropriate location for medical marijuana cultivation and infusion, as was the case when this a conditional use permit for medical marijuana cultivation infusion was first approved in 2014, and then again in 2015 and 2017. And then from an operation standpoint, NABIS, the new managers, will ensure that this new facility will operate in compliance with all city regulations and laws, the stipulations that the staff has proposed, and also the state requirements. City staff is recommending approval subject to stipulations, and we've talked about this already. Those stipulations include connecting to sewer and processing a lot combination. We have shown our client those stipulations, and they are in agreement with all the stipulations. And I'd just like to say on the record that we think that these stipulations are a good thing, that connecting the property to sewer and processing a lot combination will be a good thing for this property, as would be the case for other properties within the city. And so with that, we respectfully request your approval of this conditional use permit request. And between Lindsay and I, we're happy to address any questions that you have.
Okay. I have 3 questions for you, and I hope you can appreciate a little bit, maybe a little skepticism from us. This has been going on for how many years? So let's get this taken care of. I want to ask Rudy a question first, or Larry, that pertains to number 6 of the conditions. Correct, refresh my memory, but when we were dealing with the other operators, there was an issue that we didn't know about till after the fact of people being there who were not employees there on the property. Can you remember what I'm thinking about, Rudy? I just don't remember specifics.
Yes, ma'am. And that might have been part of the infighting that was going on with the previous ownership group. Our lieutenant, Tom Parker, had been out to the site, met with one of the on-site managers or someone who had recently been an on-site manager, and they said things to the effect that they were nervous because people were not either renewing their medical marijuana cards to work at the facility, or there were representatives of the owners coming on site who didn't have proper medical marijuana cards. I don't know that we ever found definitive proof of that, but those were some of the allegations that were made by some of the former employees.
Okay, so hearing that and assuming that there was maybe some validity to that, how is NABIS going to ensure that we don't have those issues?
Chairwoman Nesser, good question. And when that situation came up, Rudy did call me. It was 100% infighting between, there were 2 members on one side, 2 members on the other side. The 2 on the one side had been actively involved in the operations. The 2 on the other side had not been actively involved in the operations. And so when they got into this disagreement, there were people coming onto the site who didn't have their dispensary agent cards, trying to assess values and property and all that stuff. So it was a short-term problem. NABIS does, again, like I said, have history with other facilities in Arizona, and they completely understand, Mark's gonna nod, completely understand the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act and the fact that in order to have someone on your facility, you need to have a dispensary agent card, and that we will not have anyone on the property that will not have a dispensary agent card.
And we have their promise.
Yeah, it's on.
We have a security sign-in that you need to sign in.
Well, hold on, Mark, if you're gonna come up here, you guys.
You'll have to
name-
come up here.
Yeah. Name and address for the record, please, and you can give the name of the address.
Mark Kritchuk, and the address 4002 East Lamar. We have security procedures in place that will be operating at Apache Junction or other sites, as well as our dispensary. You need to have an agent card. If you don't have an agent card, you have to be signed in as a visitor, showing ID, and be always represented with somebody that has an agent card. So it's against their own procedures of having anybody on a site that's not with an agent card.
Yeah, and for example, Chairwoman, if you wanted to tour the site, or Rudy or myself, we can go out there. I don't have a dispensary agent card, nor I don't have any cards. But as long as I'm with someone with a dispensary agent card, I sign, I have to have a badge. Mark is aware of those procedures and commits to you this evening on the record that we'll keep to that.
Okay, I just wanted to put that on the record. I want to address conditions 18 and 19. 18 is giving you 90 days from approval of the CUP to apply for the lot combination. Why does it take 90 days to apply?
Shall apply for lot combination. If you, Chairwoman, it's very good, detailed reading. You should be a lawyer. Yes, you can apply an approval of, if you would like. We feel comfortable, so we'll be doing that with the property owner, David House. He has already met with a surveyor. We need a surveyor to go out there. Unfortunately, real estate is crazy right now. We're all very busy, including all the consultants. That said, I think 90 days is plenty of time to get the survey, we've got the application sitting in our office right now, and we will.
I mean, you're saying you need 90 days just to apply?
No, we will apply within, how long till it goes survey? I'll say we'll apply within 45 days? I think that's fair. We'll apply within 45
So
days.
if we change number 18 to 45 days, that wouldn't be a hardship?
I think we got it. We need a survey and a lot combination.
Okay.
The sewer is a more detailed application, like we said, many levels of regulation again, but the lot combination, we feel very comfortable to
Okay,
get that done.
well, that leads into number 19. Why does it take 6 months to apply for a sewer hookup?
So that, Chairwoman, good question, but that is more complicated, and I can let Larry and Rudy talk a little bit about it, but from our perspective, we've already engaged with the civil engineer, but we didn't kick them off until we knew if we'd get approved or not. But we have to meet with the civil engineer. They have to meet. Before, it was more complicated. When I stood up to you before and we talked about connecting to sewer, we didn't know where it would be. It was not yet in Tomahawk. Now we know it's there. But we need to connect. We need an application with the sewer department. We need an application with the city. We need to coordinate. You know, it does take a lot to get those permits in, reviewed and approved, because we've got so many different layers of the traffic, the roadway improvements, the piping, and getting it all approved.
But you believe it would take 6 months to,
I would like to have that, because I don't want to be in a situation where I'm not in compliance.
okay, all right.
There's also, Madam Chair, too, I believe ADEQ gets involved, Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, so you have to get an approval to construct
Okay.
water and sewer, so it'll be, I think, a public lateral, it's not a private main or anything.
Isn't that part of the, right here it's saying, within 180 days, they shall apply to the superstition, SMCFD. But then they've got a year to do all that, right? So they're in fact, in other words here, given 6 months and then a year, so they've got 18 months to have it all done. No? But I mean, does it
No,
really
I
take?
think before there was 2 years to get it done, was there not? So we've shortened it from 2 years to 6 months
Right,
or
but I'm
to
just
apply. And then again, there can be some time delays by a state agency of getting approvals to construct. I don't think the sewer district has a lot, and it's not like a complex project, but still, there has to be permits from
Okay.
the city to open up the street and patch the street to get a permit, right-of-way permit, if you will, to go into the street.
Okay, maybe I'm just looking at it oversimplified, but I was wondering why they were given 180 days to apply.
I think we were looking at it as a reduction from 2 years to 6
Okay.
months, so.
All right, that's all I have. Someone else?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So, Lindsay, I have 2 questions. So my understanding is, before Perpetual had all those mobile minis in, and the indication now, or the documentation indicates that there won't be a need for that because there's going to be a reduction in operations. If I understand, the cultivation element is going to be somewhat less than the infusion? Is that, talk us through that so I understand why we're not gonna have more minis show up there, more mobile minis?
Yes, Chairwoman Nasser, Vice Chair Heck, very good question. There will be no mobile minis show up in the middle of the night, I promise. Here is what the situation was. When all these guys started, right, everyone was doing everything. Growing a lot, trying to figure out what you're good at, whether you're good at making edibles, whether it's distilling the oils, all those things. The growing requires a lot of space, because it's just a lot of plants. You know, so you don't have a lot of employees on site, and it's not very intense in terms of kind of what we normally think of from land use, but it requires a lot of space. These guys have realized they're better at the infusion part and then the manufacturing kind of element of it. The state will not allow you to have an off-site. So if you look at the ATO, the authorization to operate, it's for an off-site cultivation. They don't allow you to just have infusion. So from the state's perspective, in the Department of Health Services, you can either do manufacturing at your dispensary, or you can do manufacturing in your cultivation. They don't leave an opportunity for you not to grow plants. So we will have plants on site. It will be a certain, you know, they'll work on certain genetic strains. It's unbelievable, really, all of these details that you learn. It is very sophisticated science and botany and all sorts of things I don't understand because I went to law school. But they will have a small grow area, but the majority of the property will be used for the infusion manufacturing type uses. So the production doesn't go down per se, it's the growing, it's the agriculture. So that requires less space. And all of the, you know, we before they were growing more in the buildings and they were using the mobile minis for the manufacturing. Now that we're moving the manufacturing inside, there's not as need for as much square footage.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Does that satisfy the answer? But we do
Thank
need
you.
some grow component on there because of the state.
Okay. One other question. I see from the information was provided here that we have the operator, and I understand license holder, the operator is Perpetual Healthcare. Now, I know their name's on the license, and again, this goes back to the somewhat skeptical nature and the somewhat troubling behavior of Perpetual in the past. I get a little troubled when I see operator there under their heading. I would like to think that Perpetual, even though they own the license, that they're going to have very little to do with operations, because they created a lot of this mess that we were forced to have to undo. And they did a lot of things behind our backs. They created a lot of ill will and created a lot of questions about their validity as a company. So can you give the commission some kind of reassurance that Perpetual is not gonna put their nose back into this in any way that's gonna harm this operation?
So I think I can make you feel better, Chairwoman, Vice Chair Heck. What's very interesting about this is the Perpetual, the entity is still involved. The former members are not. So all those people are gone. They do, Perpetual, the name is still there. They were still awarded the license, but those people, Mark Hale, Tim Hammer, all those people who used to be on the board of directors of Perpetual, they're not there anymore. Now you have Mark. Mark is now on the board of directors of Perpetual. So it's in name only. You can't transfer the asset, so it's
Right.
still Perpetual, but
Understand that.
all those people are gone. They have nothing to do with this operation. So as of October 24th, 2019, those 4 people who are all individually nice people, but who didn't get along with each other and caused a lot of kerfuffle for Rudy, Larry, and I'm going to put myself in that category of trying to figure,
I'm
and
sure.
yourselves, they are no longer affiliated with Perpetual Healthcare at all. The board of directors is completely changed. So if you look on the Arizona Corporation Commission, you don't see their name anymore.
So in other words, the new people own the name of
NABIS,
Perpetual.
Okay.
correct. NABIS is stepping in the shoes of the old owners, but we have to keep the
So
name.
Perpetual has no opportunity the old Perpetual board and management have no opportunity to come in and try and change things.
They are gone.
Okay. And I apologize, but we just had was a rough patch with those folks, and we're kind of stinging from that because I think we were misled. And so we would like to believe that this is a fresh start and that we can be very confident, so. Okay, thank you.
Willie? Anybody? Down?
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
kind of piggybacking off of Vice Chair Heck's question there as far as the leadership group and all that. I had the same question, but I want to take it a step further in what is the difference between the past and the present that's not going to result in us coming back here in 6 months to revoke another CUP? Because we don't want to do that again.
Right.
And that's really the tipping point for me saying yes or no.
Yes. Madam Chair, Commissioner Kreidler. I've got all these tough names tonight, Commissioner Kreidler. The tipping point is, I also, so backing up, 2014, when Mike Curley was here and got the use permit approved, that was for a different group. Then they put the mobile minis on, then Perpetual got involved, so there was a different license holder that came in. They didn't know the mobile minis weren't supposed to be on there. That's when I came involved in 2015. I do believe that my client had every intention of building that building. I think but for the infighting, they had the plans ready, they were moving forward, and then I mean, it's hard enough at work when, you know, we've got a planner that's been sick for a week and it's totally throwing us all off. I can't imagine having, you know, really emotional and financial fights between them. And so they were just paralyzed. And we got to the point where I brought in the COO and the CFO out of management to come see if we could meet these deadlines. And we had a meeting with Larry and Rudy to try to salvage this use permit. When we realized that we couldn't meet it, we were here, I don't want to say supporting the revocation, but we understood there was no way to make those timelines. If something happens that, in earnest, I really do believe it was their infighting that caused the problems and led to the revocation, that they said, mercy, we get it. NABUS has come in, is now in Perpetual's footsteps, and is telling us that they plan to operate in these two buildings. They plan to connect the building to sewer, which is fabulous, right? We want every building. I think just as citizens of Arizona, we should try to get everyone connected to sewer. And they'll also do the lot combination, which is good for the property owner. And Dave House hasn't spoken tonight, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think, you know, he has been here from the beginning, and this is an important piece of property for him that he owns in his investment in Apache Junction. So I think we're putting you're putting your trust in NABUS, and you're also kind of putting your trust in Dave House, who made a commitment and is a property owner here in Apache Junction to make this work. So NABUS has committed. They're great guys. They've been here. They were involved in some other dispensaries kind of in the East Valley before, and they've got a really strong commitment to high standards, high quality, high testing. I think if you're going to put your faith in anyone in terms of a location, these are the guys. So they've got a commitment to Arizona, a commitment to the United States, as well as in other countries, and they come to you with a breadth of experience that's bigger. You know, the Perpetual guys just had 2 licenses here, so they're kind of learning as they go. These guys come into it, you know, really wanting to get a hold in Arizona, and with a bunch of experience from a bunch of different states and countries.
So is that the big difference then, the 20-plus years of experience versus a couple years?
6, 5, 4, yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
I have a legal question for Joel to kind of clarify some of this that we've been discussing. This Perpetual Healthcare, Inc. is a entity on paper, correct? That was created for this purpose? And they have a board, and now we have new people who are the board. And what we've been hearing, is it work that simplified, that just because on paper they have a new board, that the old people can't come in and do something? Take over, whatever?
Madam Chair, members of the board, commission. I mean, I didn't check the Corporation Commission. I think, I don't know if planning staff did, but you have the applicant representing that this is a new board. And I'm sure they have bylaws and rules on how people get replaced. So it's a standard corporation, that's my guess. And it's nothing unusual.
Okay, that's, just wanted to clarify.
And plus, if they do change management, they are supposed to let the city know who the new members are and what their role will be in this company.
Okay,
Madam Chair, those are the conditions up on the screen right now.
yeah.
15.
So it talks
Okay.
about the management or ownership. So NABIS is the management group, the ownership group is still perpetual, but essentially the board is NABIS.
Okay, I just wanted to hear from Joel that basically my understanding is, yeah, that's standard practice, that a new board is taken over and, I mean, old people can't just come along and just walk in and say, oh, we're still in charge.
Well, I don't know what the financial arrangement was when new ownership, well, when new membership took place, but if those two gentlemen see the names from the last group, I'm sure they're going to flag it to you and we will have a meeting, especially if we haven't been informed, but I think we're going to be informed.
One other question. This is the first time I've ever seen this document that I remember of. I'm just curious, the approval to operate, it's for 1 year at a time? Is that how it works with the state?
Correct, they have to come, they come out twice a year, so they do one inspection, random inspection, and then you schedule your annual new, re-up your approval to operate. And I will tell you, it is a tough, that they bring 3 or 4 inspectors out, they look at everything. If you have hand soap instead of hand sanitizer, ding, I mean, you get this big deficiency list. So it is a highly regulated process, and they do come out twice a year. And you need a new approval to operate every year in order to be in compliance. And I will also tell you, Rudy talks to the friends at AZDHS, so that there's no, cities and state do a good job.
Just to make a little light of this, we're breaking our shop local rule
Shop local.
because they're cultivating here and
Infusing here.
infusing here and cultivating in Phoenix. Okay, that's all I have. Anyone else?
Yeah. Madam Chair, I just had one, just related to that. So Lindsay, a quick question. So this license expires August 7th, 2020. So does NABIS do they have the opportunity to change the ownership, or will this license forever be under perpetual? Do they ever have an opportunity, just because they own perpetual, to do a name change?
So, Chairwoman Nesser, Vice Chair Heck, they cannot change the name of perpetual. The way the law was written, they can't change it. Can they enter into a relationship where someone else takes the board seats? Yes, they can. That was kind of the lawyerly way of, right? You see all these stories about people making money.
Okay.
So they absolutely they can, but then it's on us to inform these guys. And could someone else go here? Yes. So if Perpetual and NABIS was to move and decide they want to move their cultivation somewhere else, then there would no longer be a valid conditional use permit. If another group, one of the other 130 license holders, wanted to pick up and enter into a lease with Dave House and operate here, they would need to apply for another conditional use permit.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
Welcome.
thank you.
Welcome.
Well, this is a public hearing, isn't it? Yeah. We'll open this up to the public. Do we have anyone from the public who wishes to speak? Yes. Please come down and state your name and address.
Good evening, Chairman and Chairwoman Nessler. I am Dave House. I live at 325 South Mountain View Road, Apache Junction. So I'm a local resident. I'm a retired veteran. I've owned the property for about 6.5 years. To alleviate your fears of the ownership, the previous ownership, I have no contact with the previous owners. They've totally changed management. And from what I understand, the condition of the lawsuit was that they had to sell their interests. So none of those individuals own any of the current company or entity. And so, you know, I'm a local resident. I've had this property 6.5 years. I've invested a lot of money in improvements to it, and so much of the income I generate off this goes right back into the community. And some of the employees they plan on using probably live out in the East Valley as well. So, you know, it's good for the city and the East Valley, and, you know, make them hook up the sewer, improves my property, and it opens a door for the rest of the street to access that sewer line at a reduced cost for them. So, you know, potentially more, you know, hookups down the road, because they can do it a lot cheaper, because they end up eating a bullet on getting it across the street, which is a significant cost. It's pretty expensive. And so I hope that you can find a way to approve this CUP. And if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Anyone have any questions?
I do not.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? Any other public? Hearing and seeing none, I'll close the public portion, and is there any discussion? Anyone? Anything? Well, if there's no discussion, I'll call for a motion.
So, Madam Chair,
Yes.
so before I submit a motion, I would like to just review the findings first, as well as the conditions. The findings relative to section 1-16-12D3, that's for a general CUP, and just reviewing the findings. Do any of the commission, again, if we're looking at a general CUP, any concern relative to adequacy of roadways, off-street parking, public facilities and services to accommodate the use? Any concerns?
Nope.
No.
Okay. B, any concern or any negative impacts arising from the emission of odor, dust, gas, noise, lighting, vibration, smoke, heat, or glare? Any concerns?
Nope.
C, any the contribution to the deterioration of the neighborhood or the negative impact on neighborhood property values? Any concerns?
Nope.
No.
D, the compatibility with surrounding uses and structures? Any concerns?
Nope.
No.
E, conformance with the general plan and city policies?
No.
F, screening and buffering of uses? Any concerns? G, unique nature of the property, use and/or development's physical characteristics. Any concern?
No.
Okay, then we're going to do the findings for section 1-6-12 E and F. That's the CUP for medical marijuana uses. Just going over that again. Adequacy of roadways, off-street parking, public facilities and services. Any concerns?
No.
Negative impacts arising from the emission of odor, dust, gas, noise, lighting, vibration, smoke, heat, or glare. Any concerns?
Nope.
No.
Contribution to the deterioration of the neighborhood or the negative impact on neighborhood property values. Any concern? Compatibility with surrounding uses and structures. Any concerns?
Nope.
Conformance with the general plan and city policies.
Nope.
No.
Concerns? Screening and buffering of uses. Any concerns?
Nope.
And then lastly, the unique nature of the property, use and/or development's physical characteristics.
Nope.
Okay, so the findings are good. So relative to the conditions that have been stated, the city staff submitted 22 conditions. I will alter condition number 18 from 90 to 45 days. The commission have any other concerns with any of the other conditions that are listed?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I don't see any reason to change that from 90 days. That's just standard.
No, Peter's making a motion. We can either make it or change it or second it or.
Any other,
Have you made the motion or?
No.
I haven't made it yet. I'm just,
Oh,
that's
I
what I'm,
thought you-
no, I made it yet. So I guess this is an opportunity. Does anybody feel strongly one way? Or if there's
Madam
not a
Chair.
strong feeling we need to, I'll keep it the way it is. If there
Madam
is.
Chair,
Yes,
I don't see any reason to change it.
okay.
It's, in the, first off, we're in the holiday season, so there could be delays just on that alone. So I think giving that buffer of the 90 days, even though they say they can do it in 45, I think that'd be prudent at this point.
Okay. David, any,
I'm for the 90.
okay,
Okay.
okay, all right. Then I shall alter that, go back. Okay, so any other issues related to the conditions? All right, then, Madam Chair,
Yeah,
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve case CUP-2-19, a request by Navis Holdings, Inc., on behalf of Perpetual Healthcare, Inc., represented by Lindsay Shuby of Gamage and Burnham PLC, requesting a conditional use permit to newly operate a nonprofit medical marijuana cultivation and infusion kitchen facility at 1575 East 18th Avenue, located on the southwest corner of South Tomahawk Road and East 18th Avenue, zoned industrial B5, subject to the findings and conditions of approved listed below. And the commission found that there were no concerns regarding the findings for either the general CUP or the medical marijuana CUP. And then the motion to include approval of all 22 of the conditions listed as, or approved as stated from the staff report dated December 10th, 2019.
we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner McGraw,
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser,
Yes,
Commissioner Hanchey,
Yes.
Vice Chair Heck,
Yes?
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler.
Yes.
So moved, Madam Chair. The CUP is approved unless within 20 days, any aggrieved individual files a complete appeal to the city council along with filing fees. But otherwise, if nobody appeals within 20 days, your decision stands, Madam Chair.
okay. We'll move on to old business,
No, Madam Chair.
new business,
No, no, ma'am.
information and reports.
That's up to you as
Anybody?
well, I guess. Is anybody here?
Anybody have anything to report? Okay. Director's report.
Just that we are not going to have a meeting on Christmas Eve, so we're giving you Christmas Eve off.
Really? I was looking forward
And
to it.
I think our next meeting is January 14th. I believe we're going to be talking about the general plan update at that time. So I think everybody's had a chance to, that's been out to all the different neighboring cities, agencies for about 45 days. So we'll have a report on that and some discussion, if you wish, for January 14th.
Okay. We'll move on to selection of meeting dates, times, location, and purpose.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission hold a regular meeting on January 14th, 2020 at 7 p.m. in the City Council chambers located at 300 East Superstition Boulevard.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please, Rudy.
Commissioner Kreidler,
Yes.
Commissioner McGraw.
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Yes.
Commissioner Hanchey.
Yes.
Vice Chair Heck.
Yes?
Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
So moved, Madam Chair.
And if no one objects, I will adjourn this meeting at 8:05 p.m.
I don't-
Pen, please.